Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and today I'm going to do a little bit better job shouting out our sponsors, because we do have sponsors that help me pay the bills in no way, shape, or form. We are first sponsored by Master Athletic Performance, where we are raising the bar for online coaching. Obviously, it's the Coach's Corner University podcast, so we're sponsored by Coach's Corner University. We're also sponsored by Bacon and Barbells. You can visit at baconandbarbells.co on Instagram. Use code Paul10 to save on the best shorts in the game. We're sponsored by Grindstone Blends. You can use code PONEED10 for the best cream of rice in the world. First Detachment Supplements, code Paul10 to save. And Flava Daddy Ottawa for your meal prep services. With all that out of the way, today I'm very happy to be joined by a good friend of mine, someone who I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the last year and seeing grow, expand his reach. And I said it to Liv the other day. I think in a year or two, Tyson is going to be someone who everyone knows. And it's my pleasure to have him on the podcast. So welcome, Tyson Desmarais. And yeah, happy to have you, man.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, I'm excited just to sit and shoot the shit.
Yeah, man. It's been really cool to see your evolution over the last year or so, and actually in the last couple weeks, stepping up the social media game and seeing some more like higher profile content put out. And I'm hoping you're seeing the return on investment there in terms of eyes, because it's fun to watch, it's engaging, and it's also really informative and valuable. So yeah, let's start it off. Like, who are you? Why are you on the podcast?
Okay, well, I'm a I started as a personal trainer. I've been kind of personal training for years. It started in prison, really, and I'll get into that a little bit earlier. Now in prison, you have to realize you're not going to pay with kind of regular money. It's kind of tuna and protein powder and eggs is how it was paid. And that's great way to get paid in there because you can never get enough protein. So I kind of started with guys in there, helping them build better bodies, because it's a place where you tend to have a bit more time to invest in yourself. But it's crazy how many people walked into the pen, whether I was in maximum or medium or minimum, and they all said the same thing. Oh man, when I leave here, I'm going to be in the craziest shape. I'm going to have a six pack. Like if I had a can of tuna for every time I heard that, I have a lot of tuna.
You probably have mercury poisoning.
I have mercury. Yeah, I would definitely have mercury poisoning if they actually followed through on it. But and we'll get into this later, I'm sure. It ends up that the intentions are there, the motivation is there, but the desire, drive, and discipline is not. And when they realize the actual effort that is required in changing the habits that they've been living with, the complacent lifestyle they've had for however many years, they give up rather quickly. It's very much like the New Year's resolution. So that's kind of where I began the journey of being a personal trainer. I was in very good shape. Part of survival in prison is, survival of the fittest. If you want to be left alone, which I did, I had a very serious charge, a very serious sentence. So if I were to get into any problems, in a fight or any kind of, let's say trafficking inside, which happens quite a bit, it could add years to my sentence. So it was very important for me to keep a low profile, and to just have a presence that most people, either respected, because I was respectful to everyone, but to be quiet and just to kind of say, well, he's a fairly capable looking guy. Maybe we should leave him alone.
Right.
So that's kind of the start that my personal training took. When I got out of prison, I started in construction and hated it with a passion. I was blessed for the opportunity. I worked with a friend and his father, and I love them for everything that they taught me. I'm forever grateful to them. But I just didn't like it. I was miserable every day. I just would be working until it was Friday, and
Right.
I couldn't wait for a 2-day break. And I kind of thought that I was relegated, especially in prison. You think you're kind of relegated to trade work because you have a criminal record. So who's going to hire you,
Right.
right? While I was still getting my feet underneath me after being in prison for 10 years, I decided at the halfway house that I'd start doing personal training part-time, which was very hard because I was doing halfway house in Gatineau.
Mm-hmm.
My wife to be was in Barhaven. So I worked in Ottawa. So the driving and the coordination and the time management was insane. I was very close to burnout
Yeah.
within the first year, because I could, just enough time to go from Gatineau to Ottawa, back to the halfway house to do a check-in for an hour for dinner, to Barhaven to spend time with my wife, to train a client, back for curfew in Gatineau, to do some cleaning and chores at the halfway house before bed, to be up at 4:30 or 5 the next morning. It was
Right.
just like a year of nuttiness. And in 2019, I got enough clients towards the end of the year that I basically had to decide of, do I continue in construction in the job that I hate, or do I take a leap of faith? And I talked to my dear wife, and I asked her, and I mean, this woman's had my back, and I know the importance of
Yeah.
having a solid partner. She believed in my passion. She believed in my dream. And on December 31st, 2019 was my last day in construction. January 1st, 2020 was when I started personal training. 2 weeks after starting personal training full time, the gym that I was working out of shut its doors. Now, let me tell you, getting a job at Good Life in Mavati with a criminal record is not going to happen.
Right.
So I was literally up Schitt's Creek. I didn't know where I was going to go. One of the trainers from that gym went to school with Nick and was fortunate enough to bring me along with him, because he was going to go there and train. I met Nick. Nick said, I don't care about your past, it's what you bring to the table. And he offered me the opportunity to start my business. So by the beginning of February, MINDSystem was my business. I got it registered. I got, kind of the sole proprietorship.
Yep.
And started it up. The funny thing is, with MINDSystem, I originally had it as an anagram.
Really?
And no one knows this. Okay, I do not talk about this. So when I was in prison, one of my buddies was a really big Ben Pakulski fan and his training methods. So he sent me a lot of the MI40 stuff, so I could kind of catch up on all the stuff that I had never seen while I was
Right.
institutionalized. We don't have access to that stuff. So I was like, oh, these are some really cool principles I've never seen before. So I read and did some research, and I was just kind of impressed with that. I followed some of the stuff when I got out, and I like some of the mindset stuff and, other things. And I'm like, oh, I like that muscular intelligence thing. So when I started MINDSystem, it actually stands for, and now everyone's going to know, originally it was for Muscular Intelligence Nutritional Development System.
I like it better now.
Oh, I do too, because it's genuine now.
Yep.
But I thought it was something at the time that I felt spoke to me.
Yeah.
Now, as we evolve, our perception, our focus, and things change. So as you know now, I've kind of moved from personal training into coaching, and I was blessed to have you as a mentor. Shout out to this man right here for showing me so much, teaching me so much when it comes to growing my business. I wouldn't be where I am right now if it weren't for a lot of the principles that he shared with me. And I'm going to be eternally grateful, and I'll always give credit and props. So guys,
thank you.
If you're ever looking for someone to help you with your business, you look no further. This man, I swear by him.
Thank you.
So as you help me grow as a coach, with online, so still with training and nutrition, I've always kind of been mentoring my clients from a life coaching standpoint, I've actually been doing it since prison. And if I really look back at to when did I start mentoring people and helping people, people have been coming into my cell since I got my act together.
Mm-hmm.
Because even in a very dark, unhappy, dangerous, violent place, I had peace. Now, no one here is going to know what this is like, but I'm going to paint you a really quick picture. In prison, within 7 years, sometimes less, you are institutionalized, right? Your all your freedoms you basically now give up. They break you.
Mm-hmm.
Men, after 7 years, and I've seen guys that have been there for 20, 30, 40 years, okay? They do not walk with their head up. Their heads down. It's like watching an orca in captivity with this dorsal fin collapse. Our dorsal fin is that ability to, posture up,
Mm-hmm.
to walk with your head up with a clear and defined purpose, like you know where you're heading. Most guys there are just existing. They're just looking down and trying to get through life. So, guys would come and just ask, like, why are you happy? How is this place not broken? You've been in for this long. And so I'd share my experience with people. I'm an open book, and you know this.
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
very open about my past. I'm talking about it right now. And the reason why is that I share openly my past, not just so that people, especially my survival coaching, my life coaching clients, will feel easier with sharing, their personal struggles with me. But I share it because I don't want my past to have any power over me. My mistakes do not define me as a man. They're just mistakes.
Yeah.
That's it. And I know that's the case because if it wasn't, I am a lifer. Now, a lifer is someone who is literally sentenced to life in prison with an eligibility of parole. Eligibility does not mean guaranteed.
Right.
So I had a life sentence with an eligibility at 10 years. So I had to work really hard on proving that I had redeemed myself and I was worthy of a second chance. So my focus now with my clients is, as I said, it's called survival coaching. And, I might not have a doctorate or a master's from university, but I do have a doctorate in the School of Hard Knocks.
You have an advanced degree in life under the most obscene conditions. And, as you were talking and describing, the way you put it was life in captivity, I see so many people day to day in their own personal prisons, whether it be a prison of a job that they hate, whether it be a prison of a relationship that they're not fulfilled in. But in more cases than not, it's a prison that they've kind of put themselves in of their own mind and the buildup of limiting beliefs that they have. And I think, while you started your business, we'll call it from the surface level, right? It's like muscle intelligence, nutritional development. That's really surface level.
Absolutely.
And if I don't want to get into a conversation with somebody and they ask what I do, I say I coach nutrition and training online. But when you take that anagram away and you say mind system, and I know you and I know what you do, and I know that the trajectory of your business now towards this more life coaching, survival coaching, you're really using training and nutrition as a vehicle to unlock people's minds to what's actually possible within their own lives. And that goes a lot deeper than muscles and nutrition.
Yeah.
And I fucking love that. I love when people actually truly unlock, like, it's probably the happiest I am in the work that I do when I see that light bulb go off in someone's head, that when they realize, like, no, there's a deeper reason that I do this, and they start pivoting towards that. And I see how excited you are. And like, putting it into perspective, you started your business in 2019. Now we're in 2020 and there's a pandemic. That's only 3 years ago. Right? That's only 3 years ago. So in 3 years, there's been this evolution where you've made a living personal training. You've transitioned that, probably 50-50 to online. And now you run a hybrid business. You have now a third revenue vertical. And it's ignited this new passion within you to serve people in a different way. And I just think that's really important to highlight, because I think far too often people put themselves in this box of what they should be. It's like, I'm a personal trainer. It's like, okay, well, the key word there is personal. And what are you going to do with that person in front of you when they have things outside of physical limitations? It's like, oh, I can rehab their any injury. I was like, cool. What if they're scared to get under a bar after you rehab them? That's not a physical problem. That's a cognitive problem. Well, I can give them macros. It's like, cool. What if they can't follow them? Oh, I can give them a meal plan. Well, what if they can't follow that? Right. So as I get into, this more and more, and I've been doing this, for 18 years now, coaching clients, you come to realize that the nuts and bolts, the X's and O's, it only goes so far.
Yeah.
And I think you can, and I'm going to open back up the floor to you and like speak a little bit into how you've used this. You just essentially looked at the needs of the clients in front of you, and you looked in the mirror and said, what tools do I have to help these people? And you're like, oh yeah, I have this advanced degree that no one else has. How do I use it? How do I package it? Take it from here, man.
So you hit the nail on the head. Nothing kills a man faster than his thoughts.
Yep.
The hardest prison to escape is your mind. Okay? We're all doing time. All of us.
Mm-hmm.
We're all doing a life sentence. We're relegating ourselves to a life of mediocrity and complacency. And that's acceptable to 90% of the people. And you know what? I can't do anything to change those people. I can't, because that's like me telling you that every person I talked to in prison was successful in hitting their goals. No, small percentage. Small. So what I'm looking for in the people that I'm dealing with are those that acknowledge their limitations. And look, I'm very passionate. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I love my job.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I wake up excited, like pumped up. But I have to then kind of remember to humble myself, despite the very lived experience that I've had that, puts me, I think, ahead of my peers in that sense.
Well, you have a perspective.
Practical.
You have a very firm perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. On reality. On reality. Like, we can all, sing Kumbaya and meditate, and, we can all, oh, you're a victim. Oh, poor you. I'm so sorry to hear that. You know what? You had a role to play in where you are.
Absolutely.
Shut up. Stop. Yes, perhaps you went through a trauma. Not saying people don't experience that. Absolutely. Okay. Not saying you weren't a victim of something. I was a victim of childhood abuse, right? My mom literally had to move across the country in the middle of the night because my dad was a psycho. He wanted to kidnap me and put me in a cult with him that believed in aliens. Like, I shit you not. My mom had to run across Canada. Yeah. She had to run across Canada to live at my grandparents. She got a lawyer, and he said, you can't even get a parking ticket or pulled over by a cop right now because you are technically in like the laws of the eyes of the law, you kidnapped your son. So until she got this all cleared up, she had to keep a low profile in order to keep me safe. And I still squandered that gift that my mom risked her freedom for. I didn't appreciate it. So you want to talk about redemption? I've been trying to do this for about as long as I could live, that I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things, as a man, I live with regret. And I think that's any man. So what I try to convey to the women or the men that I work with is we all have a Mount Everest. Every Mount Everest was conquered with a couple things. So even, it doesn't matter how experienced the climber was. They all had a Sherpa. They all had a guide that knew the way, that had done it before. Mm-hmm. And they all had the tools and resources to use at the appropriate times.
Right.
So I'm not here to tell you I know it all. And I'm not here to say you're not competent at doing it, or I'm going to provide you with something that you don't already have. No, you have. Everyone has the same tools and resources that I have. Mm-hmm. The only difference is that I'm experienced at using them at the appropriate times and acknowledging the dangers when they approach.
I think
so. That's it. Like, just like with fat loss and with building muscle, there's really nothing new.
Right. I think there's a lot to tease out of that, because I think as a coach, it's our job not necessarily to teach anyone anything new, because at the core, I think people know what they should be doing, right? Like, you don't have to have some sort of magnificent life experience to know that fruits and vegetables are probably better than Danishes.
Well,
but Danishes are delicious, and sometimes you want a Danish.
I do.
I do, yeah. But I think as coaches, what we do is we work to flip that switch in the person's mind and move towards this attitude of accountability, this attitude of self-reliance, and this, like, the victim mindset to me, and this is something I've been diving into a little bit more, so it's a bit fresh in my head. This attitude of external locus of control. So when we look at failure, it's much easier to accept that a failure is due to circumstances outside of our own personal control. So take the fat loss example. I can't lose body fat because losing body fat is complicated. I'm failing because it's complicated. Then if we come in, and I run into this with marketing all the time, with talking with coaches about how to market, and they're like, fat loss is easy. It's like, when you call fat loss easy, you would essentially tell people that they're shit. Yeah. Because for them, it's complicated. So, but when we win at something, it's more fulfilling to say, this win was because of my effort. What we need to do is teach people to apply that same internal locus of control to everything in their lives.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned it with trauma, the idea that, you are a victim of something. Absolutely. Bad things happen. I remember a couple of years ago, I made a post on Instagram, and it was just a black square, and it says, "You're not a victim." I got a bunch of likes. I got so much hate. Oh, you're saying that my sister who got raped isn't a victim. I was like, pump your brakes there, Turbo. That's not what I said.
Yeah.
But even in the most heinous of situations, how you respond to being a victim, how you take that situation, regain control, use that perspective to move forward in your life in a positive way. You're going to need help. You're going to need therapy. You're going to need support. You're going to need all of those things, but you are capable of moving forward. And there's many people who are evidence of that ability. But that internal locus of control is so, so important. And I'm wondering, you sent me a document earlier about cognitive distortions, and I think this is a perfect pivot into that conversation, where we have these stories in our mind that we make up that essentially shape our reality. And so the words we use, whether it be talking about What does peanut butter taste like? Tastes like
That's
peanut
my
butter.
comfort food.
Yeah, but it tastes like you have no,
Yep.
unless someone has tried peanut butter, they have no idea. But when I say peanut butter, that language creates an emotion within you, right?
Absolutely.
It's the same thing in our heads, right? So if I say I'm a victim, that creates a reality for me.
Yeah.
And I'm
Because
wondering,
it's the power of word,
yeah. So,
right?
so jump
We're
in, yeah.
vocalizing, we're saying, well, I am a victim. Now we're solidifying it.
Mm,
Right. So that's the thing. So for myself, so I'll give everyone a brief background here. So before we get into cognitive distortions, let's open to the box of how I was a victim.
sure.
Okay. Or how I perceived I was a victim. So and I'll give you the Coles notes of what kind of happened leading up to the whole prison thing and what I gleaned from it. I think this will give people kind of an introspective of how you go from victim to victor. Now, this is 87,000, as I've told you, I've said
Yeah.
this a few times. This is 87,000 hours worth of work. This is what 10 years and going continued education on myself, what this takes. Okay. So if anyone's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I understand how long it took me to work through this. So in my early 20s, I was homeless. Okay. I was living out of my car and off of my friends' couches. In fact, there was a period of time, because it was during the winter, that I had to sneak into a underground garage to sleep in a closet in order to stay warm. Okay. This isn't a boohoo, by the way, people. Please don't feel pity. This is my own stupidity that got me here. Okay. I had cancer at 26. I had half my sternum removed. I was betrayed by my ex. Okay. And sentenced to life in prison at 28. This led me to spending more than a quarter of my life behind bars. So during my time in prison, I learned to take accountability for my actions and stop playing the victim. Okay. Now, for a long time, I felt, well, my ex ratted me out and my co-accused got me to go along with this crime by lying to me. Now, the night that it happened, what he had done is he had come to see me at my condo. Now, this was a guy I bounced with, I bled with, I fought with. Like, he was like a brother to me. Okay. And he came and he said, Tyson, there's a guy, he raped my friend's girlfriend. Well, I had very poor morals and values, but there's a certain code of conduct among criminals. You don't touch kids and you don't touch women. If you do that and you're in prison and you go into Gen Pop, you will die. If you're in maximum security and medium security, you will die. I kid you not. Someone will go after you. Okay. So when he said that, I was triggered because my ex, who I was with at the time, had been sexually assaulted. My mother's been sexually assaulted. My aunt's been sexually assaulted. So I've got a real hate and contempt for people, like any normal person would. So it triggered me. But what's funny is the story he told me, my gut felt like there was something that was off.
Mm.
But I allowed myself to become influenced by this, I don't want to say knight in shining armor, but this whole valiant protector, I'm righteous, no one should do that. So we moved against this guy and it got out of hand. He ended up dead. He went for a gun and I basically crushed his throat while holding him in a chokehold, and it took his life. He died the next day. So I ended up finding out 6 months into provincial, so waiting my sentencing. This is pre-trial. I ended up finding out from discovery that the guy never did that. The reason why we were actually going after him was because my friend was actually someone who sold steroids for me. I had a lab at the time with another partner of mine. And he was one of my sellers. And I had cuffed him $5,000 worth of steroids that he then cuffed to this individual. And he refused to pay him. So I went to go do a collection for my own product without knowing that's what I was doing. So I took a man's life for a measly $5,000. So when you come to terms with this, which I couldn't for years, I blamed everyone except for myself. I blamed the abuse I went through as a kid. I blamed my co-accused. I blamed my ex. It was everyone's fault but my own.
That external locus of control, yeah.
Dude, like, I challenge anyone to find a better example of this to the extreme. And it was literally to the extreme. When people, we had in this life coaching course that I'm now taking, they asked to do a 3-chair approach where you have a chair of negative self-talk, a chair of judging, and a chair of support. And when I gave my feedback, they're like, oh, we want you to visualize. This is going to sound silly. We want you to visualize. I'm like, silly? Well, that's what I did basically for the first 3 years of my sentence. It was negative self-talk and nothing but contempt and judgment of myself. I've been judged by a jury of my peers and sentenced to life in prison. And that wasn't as bad as what I had accused myself of.
Dude, everything you're saying is like, yep, totally. I've done the same stuff. Obviously not the same situation, but like in different scenarios, right?
Yeah, we all have. And that's why people relate to it. Is mine is an extreme. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we've all done it. So it's like, it wasn't until I participated in restorative justice. Okay. So I actually went and listened to victims of violent crimes. The one that blew my mind was a couple that actually headed our restorative justice program, was a husband and wife. I tell you to sit down, but you already are. So they went out for a dinner. They came back home to find their daughter dead by the hands of their son. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So imagine you're losing both your children in one night, one to death and one to prison. Bro, I heard that story. They sat there and they told that story. I'm just giving, again, the Cole's notes of it. But the hole that left in my soul, the empathy you feel for these people. Like, I remember going and getting sentenced. Now, I went to court alone. I had no support there. I had no family, no friends show up. And sorry, my dog's in the background there, doing what dogs do. I went to court and I had basically a shady ass lawyer who actually tried to take the only thing I had left of any value of material, which I guess at that point mattered, was a Panerai watch, a $10,000 watch. I had given it to him in hopes that I wouldn't get taken by the prison, only to find out he actually tried to hawk it and pawn it and get it appraised by a jeweler that I knew. And he knew it was my watch. So anyways, I walked into that courtroom facing the victim's family alone. And I'll tell you, man, when those parents told their story, my mind shifted to seeing them staring at me with hate and contempt. And at that moment, I felt like I was still a victim in some kind of delusional way.
Right.
And I thought, holy shit. Like, it's time to put your big boy pants on and start making some serious changes in your life. And it was there. The insight into the pain that I caused, man, there was empathy right there.
Yeah.
And in turn, I was able to start forgiving people that had hurt me. My dad, my grandfather, others. I was like, okay, I have to start moving past these things. I'm living with all this hate and anger. Why? It's just taking my energy. And when I learned to forgive them, I finally was able to forgive myself. And then I started to find some peace. So I don't think of it as 10 years lost when I think of my time in prison. No, I think of the perspective, the insight, and the experience that I gained from that experience. Like it's
You
it's
found
helped
out
me
who you are.
become, yeah, it helped define me as one of the most dedicated, determined individuals that anyone's ever going to meet.
Yep.
Like, even if I fail at something, which I'm not afraid of, because I've, trust me, I've seen failure. It doesn't scare me. It's like, okay, so what do I got to do different? Like, let's go.
Well, failure ceases to exist, right? So failure
Yeah.
ceases to exist because you know that no matter what befalls you, you have the control to change your scenario. Um,
Yep.
and I'm just thinking about within your story, it was the moment you heard the story from these parents that kind of unlocked it for you. One thing that I think many coaches miss the boat on when trying to create change for those that they work with is the ability to unlock that trigger for change, that call to action. You think about the person that's completely unhealthy until they have a heart attack, and then the heart attack is that impetus for change. And
Yep.
I just started working with a gentleman, Franco from the gym. Reached out to me. He had had a heart attack a year ago. He's finally in a position where he's allowed to get back to training, and he wanted some help with his nutrition. But he didn't recognize how unhealthy he was until he had a heart attack. I think everyone has a different trigger, and
Yep.
yours was a trigger on the emotional side of things that like figure your shit out. But when we're talking about using the vehicle of nutrition and training to unlock the mind, you have to find that trigger for people.
Absolutely.
So how do you do that? How do we get past these, the cognitive distortions I mentioned earlier are essentially the stories you told yourself about victimhood.
So again, some of the things, especially as I work more with my clients over the years, look, when they start, I mean, the gym's a great way to develop the discipline, the structure, and
Yeah.
all that stuff. All the things we've heard a million TikToks and Instagram posts say, which is true. It's great. It's inspiring. I love seeing that. I'm not criticizing it at all. But then I like to ask my client, okay, so let's say a year down the road or 6 months down the road or however long it takes, we get your six pack, whatever, your six pack, whatever that is. Are you going to be more happy, more fulfilled? And most of them are kind of like, well, it's a goal. I'm like, okay, no, like I'm all for your goals, but you're looking for something that you're going to be able to objectively get if you listen to everything that I say as your coach.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think is going to give you greater fulfillment? So my focus now is shifting from the body to the inner six pack, as I like to
Yeah.
call it. So I want my clients to kind of be able to realize, okay, what matters more and what really facilitates long-term change and sustainability with a healthier lifestyle, which is what I promote, is address what's internal first. If that's a trauma, if that's you being a victim of something, whatever it is, we need to address that first. Because a lot of us coaches, we think, well, a calorie is a calorie, a protein, fat, carbs, whatever. Like track this, do that, exercise. You're going to get the body you want. But what you don't realize is why someone's doing what they're doing. So, for instance, for myself, I was using food, and we're going to get into this shortly, but I was using food as a coping mechanism in prison. allowed myself to actually get quite close to obesity. I
What?
was 275 pounds with a 42-inch waist.
You're lying.
I kid you not. I've got to find the pictures I had when I was in prison. But I came into prison about 245 pounds jacked, but I mean, I was on a buttload of gear. And my system crashed hard in prison. And I then started to turn to food, especially in federal. In provincial, you're basically like not malnourished basically the whole time. When you get into federal, and I went to the kitchen for my job, you now have access to actually like decently good food. So I started eating my emotions. It was a coping mechanism.
For anyone who doesn't know Tyson and who might be listening, he's probably the most vascular human being I've ever met in like day-to-day life. We're not talking about like he's dieting for a contest. He's walking around at like 6% all the time.
Yeah, I'd say probably 7. I think I'd say up to 8 maximum. But yeah, year round, I'm single digit.
Yeah.
And I hold that comfortably. Like I'm never dead.
No, you're never also like dieting so strict you can't enjoy meals with your wife and stuff.
No, my daily intake is anywhere from 3,000 to 3,500 on average.
Right. Yeah.
So it's
To hear
reasonable.
you say that you were 275 and fat, I was like,
dude, 275 and fat. And I promise I will find the pictures and I will bring proof. Okay. Proof of life, proof of fat, proof. And this is where it gets interesting. So I'm gonna give you guys an example. So there's a book series that I was listening to, and it was talking about why people do certain things. Now, if you and I had this lady as a client, the one I'm going to refer to, we again might just say, well, you got to eat less, you got to move more, blah 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 blah. Well, this girl, they ended up finding out that the reason why she became morbidly obese was that she was sexually assaulted at a younger age. So her coping mechanism wasn't just food in the sense, well, food makes me feel comfortable. She didn't even realize that she wanted to become undesirable in the sense that she wanted to become invisible so that wouldn't happen again.
yeah.
So now, again, we tend to think of, well, there's black and white of how you lose weight, but now here's the gray.
Oh, for sure. And that's
so
like, the gray is coaching. Like everything we do exists in the gray.
Yeah. So that really opened up my eyes to the fact, like, okay, I've had a lot of success with clients. I've transformed a lot of bodies. And that's made me feel good. Don't get me wrong. It's brought me plenty of fulfillment to make people happy. But the greatest joy I've ever had was when I transformed the mind. And I'm not a clinical psychologist, psychiatrist, or anything like that. But I am a mindset coach. Because if I can conquer the depths of despair that you encounter in the day-to-day life of prison, you can conquer anything. And I'm confident that we are all capable of conquering our own self-imposed prison. So this gets into this cognitive distortion of the truth about the should. Now, I sent you this, and this was very eye-opening to me. And this is actually how I start off all of my survival coaching clients, the first kind of session we have together, because pretty much everyone I work with is using one of these things that we're going to cover as a coping mechanism. So the cognitive distortions, so the truth about shoulds. So again, this kind of goes into we can say the negative self-talk, the should, could, right? Could have, I should have. So this is, why do we tell ourselves lies? To avoid the feelings that arise when we face and embrace reality. We often avoid the truths of our lives by waiting for fantasies to become true rather than face what is true. So waiting for is real to become unreal is how we lie to ourselves about our loved ones, ourselves, and life itself.
Hmm.
We suffer because we fight reality. A fight we always lose.
Yep.
The lies we tell ourselves are invisible to us. That's why we need a coach or a therapist to help us see those lies and the cost they inflict. Then we can begin to face the truths that we've avoided for so long.
I love that. I love that. And I love that because it speaks to so many different things that I think a lot of people deal with day to day. And whether, whether we're going to approach this conversation and frame it as how Tyson coaches his clients, or frame it from the perspective of how we as coaches address our own limitations and our own limiting beliefs. Should statements are one of the most challenging things to overcome. I remember meeting a person within the last couple of years, actually, and I should do this and I should do that. And, within the context of our relationship, I was like, man, I don't respect you at all, because you should do a lot of things, but you do nothing.
Yeah.
But then slowly but surely, he started doing stuff. And not only did his respect for himself grow,
Mm-hmm.
but my respect for him grew as well. And I think it's within that respect for self and turning those shoulds into get tos. I should do this. Well, I get to do this, or I have to do this, or those types of things, like the words we tell ourselves, the language we use to frame reality.
How about I'm excited?
Yeah,
I'm excited to do this.
I actually wrote this down. Let me pull it up because I think it's worth noting. So when I was at the conference this weekend, I wrote this down. I said, so you said telling lies to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The way I framed it was keeping promises. So for me, when I make a promise to somebody and I can't follow through on it, the amount of guilt and shame that I feel is so deep. And I know that most people, if they can't hold true to a promise they've made to somebody else, they feel like shit. But if they break a promise to themselves, they just brush it off.
Absolutely.
So, we fall short on ourselves all the time, whether it's, I'm only going to have 3 drinks this weekend and you have 5, or I'm going to do my cardio tonight and you don't. Right? It's like every time you break a promise to yourself, you're just bringing down your level of self-respect.
Yeah.
And it's that virtue of selfishness. Like, I have to care for myself before I can care to others. I have to pour into my own cup before I pour into others. When was the last time that you apologized to yourself when you fell short on a promise you wanted to keep?
It's actually a good question. Last time I had to apologize to myself for falling short.
And you don't have to answer. And I don't think I had.
No, I actually think that's a great question, because I'm like, when was the last time I didn't really hit an objective?
Well, mine was last.
Fair enough.
I told myself, because I didn't have time to do cardio in the morning because I had some appointments. I was like, I'm going to do cardio before I go to bed. And by the time it was 8:30, I still had about an hour left of work. So I'm like, guess I'm not doing cardio tonight. But to me, I apologized. I said, listen, your priorities are where they need to be. The priority is on work, so you got to follow through on this. And I apologized. I moved on, and I did a little bit extra this morning. So make up for it.
And that's what a high accountability man does. And that's why I was so eager and willing to work with you, because you don't just talk a good game, because you are good with your words, sir.
Thank you.
but you live it. You live it. And that's the only way I'm ever going to take direction from someone is by seeing their actions speak louder than their words.
100%. And yeah, man,
You know,
I can't fucking stand it when people, and maybe this is, a bit of venting, but who cares? The number of people who purport to be something that they're not through social media, the number of people who, you know, talk a
Oh,
big game.
I got an analogy for that. I got an
I
analogy
love
for
it.
that.
Let's
Can I
go.
can I use
Yeah.
it? Okay. Okay. Write this down. No, I'm just kidding. So I actually told this to my wife, and my wife was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And then she got it, and she was like, "Oh man," she's like, "That's good." So I compare fitness influencers and a lot of trainers to strippers. Now, I used to be in the strip clubs a lot when I was younger. I used to drive dancers. Okay, I never really cared about it, but it was just a part of my job. And I was a doorman in strip clubs. So under the right lights, these ladies of the night can appear very beautiful. With the right music, a little bit of alcohol, we think they are unbelievable, tens. Now, you get them under the real light, and all their flaws come out. The C-section scars, the back knee, the missing tooth, the fake hair. The analogy is that's exactly what our industry is basically become. It's become a really sad fitness influencer area. Like there's nothing of substance anymore. Because when you take their stuff and you look at it under the real light, you're just like, there's holes everywhere. It's horrible.
There's holes
And
everywhere. It's disingenuous. What gets me is that it's disingenuous, right? You can tell
yeah,
those people who are putting out content for the purpose of making money, and you can tell the people that are putting out content for the purpose of helping people.
mm-hmm.
Um, and this isn't to say that there aren't people that do a fantastic job, right? There are a lot
Absolutely.
of people that go above and beyond to provide value.
Yes.
But those are seldom the people with the audiences that can actually have a big impact. And that's the unfortunate nature of marketing. It was actually a quote from this weekend that I think is really, really cool. It's like marketing ruins industries,
Mm-hmm.
because marketing can sell a bad product.
V-shred.
V-shred, um, all the, what's it called? Isogenics, right? There's
Yeah.
so many, marketing, selling shit products and educating people into this idea that certain things need to be certain ways. But all we can do as coaches and as people passionate about driving value is be the signal in the noise, is be the best versions that we can be, and
Be authentic.
be authentic and serve others. And
Yeah.
it will, like, the cream rises to the top, right? There's a reason
Yeah.
V-Shreds isn't around anymore, right? There's a
Yeah.
reason that some of these things have fallen off, and I can't even remember them off the top of my head, but I've seen them as they've come through.
Absolutely.
And I think
Because why we don't remember is it doesn't matter in the end.
it didn't have an emotional impact on us. And at the end of the day, I don't care if I have 5 followers or 500,000, as long as the people that I get to interact with on a daily basis actually get value from what I have to offer.
Yeah.
That's really all I care about. Now I want to be mindful of time as we're getting close to that hour mark. I do have some quick hit questions that are in no way related to anything that we've talked about.
Absolutely.
What was the most epic cheat meal you've ever had?
Oh, actually, that was in prison. I think it was probably one of the craziest.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember the actual breakdown of what we had. So there was two guys that lived in my condo that I actually, and very rarely do you actually make friends in prison. You make acquaintances, but you don't really ever make friends. But there's two guys that actually became friends, and this is in minimum. So we did a breakfast of it was pancakes with cookies, Nutella, peanut butter, icing. Like it was ridiculous. It was like literally a like diabetes induced coma. of calories and carbs and sugar. That was a breakfast. Meal two was, oh shoot, I think I want to say it was burgers, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a whole day of binging. Now
Perfect.
the reason why is it was like I was doing at this time this like intermittent fasting, the big rage back in 2000,
Yeah.
and I want to say it was 2016 when I did this.
Okay.
Um, and then basically the following day I'd be fasting for 24 hours. So I was like retardedly ripped at this time. So I could allow for like this kind of stupid amount of calories with this 8 hour window that I had to eat. So yeah, it was like a burger, it was a sandwich of some kind with chips, like Doritos. I remember it was Doritos. And then dinner was a calzone, two massive calzones that were like, I don't know, stupid, okay? With a carrot cake. I honestly don't know how many calories I had consumed that day.
Probably 20 grand.
Probably. I think it would be one of those what is it, like the 10,000 calorie challenge? It
Yeah.
definitely did that and then some.
That's awesome.
So that was probably my craziest, not cheat meal, but cheat day.
I would love to do one of those and actually track, because I've done crazy food stuff, but I've never actually tracked it.
Yeah.
What is one album you could listen to with no skips?
Ooh. Weezer, the Blue Album, first one.
Okay. What is the scariest set you've ever done in a workout?
Oh, oh. We almost had that one workout we did was pretty brutal. You, myself, and Paul.
Yeah.
That was definitely up there. But I'd say the craziest was, again, I'm gonna go to prison in medium security on leg press. So we did I did 64 reps with a weight that I should have been like, it would have been a max effort of probably about 25 reps.
Mhm.
And it was basically a rest pause until I hit 64, where I literally got stuck underneath. They had to pull the plates off and finally went up. I crawled out and just kind of laid on the side.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was probably the most brutal, intense set. Like, I don't even remember how bad the shit we did in prison sometimes. Guards would come and just ask, like, "Are you well? Like, what's wrong with you?"
Are you
I
trying to
actually
kill
was
yourself
doing
with weights?
yeah, like I actually did box jumps once on the end of leg day on a pool table because we had nothing else to do box jumps off of. It was this dilapidated old pool table. On my last round, on my fifth box jump, I think my last one, my feet slipped and I smashed my shins on the edge of the pool table and opened them both up to the bone. I had to be brought into the hospital in a wheelchair, looking like Hannibal Lecter, cuffed from the waist down to my feet and ankles, wheeled in on the wheelchair to get my shins stitched up. And everyone in the hospital, I was brought to the Abbotsford emergency in BC, and everyone was looking at me like, "Oh my god, what the hell?" Yeah. So yeah, I've got some prison stories, bro. That's one of them. But yeah, I've had some crazy workouts in prison.
um, what was the next one? You plus five at a dinner table, dead or alive?
Dead or alive? Well, my wife's got to be there because we're gonna enjoy that. So my
Yeah.
wife's got to be Jesus, David, King David, King Solomon, um, and oof, it's like I've never been asked that question before.
Stuff.
My victim.
You can dig it.
Yeah, yeah.
Final
I
question.
would.
Oh,
definitely need to talk with him.
Okay. At the risk of making a joke about it, have you ever heard Joey Diaz talk about how he is friends with the guy he kidnapped now?
No.
You know who Joey Diaz is, right? The comedian?
Yeah.
Well, he went to jail for kidnapping.
Oh no.
And after he got out of prison, he added the guy he kidnapped on Facebook. And now he chats with him and wishes him happy birthday every year.
Oh my God. You know what? That's restorative justice. That's restorative justice right there.
Last question, most important question of the whole podcast. If there was one person that you would like me to interview on the podcast, who would it be? But the caveat is you have to help me get them on my podcast. So it has to be somebody you know.
Oh, wow. That actually is a good question. Someone that I know.
The way I do this is I just get you guys to do my job for me.
You know what? So my life coaching course, out of the 17 people that I'm currently in class with, 6 of them are doctors of various sorts. There's one guy, I think his name is Ali, if I'm not mistaken. I've only had a brief interaction with him, but he basically is he works with children with I think I want to say he's a psychologist. He works with something with the brain with children, and just, he talked about being burnt out and different things. Anyways, I would love to hear more from what his experience is. And yeah, it was probably the most humbling thing, walking into that room thinking that I'd be king of the hill, and then I come in with all these doctors, and I'm like, well, eat some humble pie, boy.
Dude, we talked about that yesterday. Those are the kind of rooms you need to be in if you want to grow.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be in it. But I think that would be someone I would love to hear more from.
Yeah. Well, we'll get his contact information. Dude, I really appreciate your time and coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed this. I think you opening up about your past, not only, has it hold no power over you, but you're also using it for good. You're using the experiences to help others. And like I said at the beginning, seeing your growth from, a guy who just personal trains and helps people get jacked into somebody who is actually unlocking human potential and teaching people what can be accomplished within their lives has been awesome to see. So thank you so much for joining me. And we'll definitely have to get another leg day for sure.
Dude, absolutely. I'm always down for it. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And it's very humbling to be here and to have the opportunity to talk and share. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you everyone for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. If you need to get a hold of me, you can reach me through any channel. I'd be happy to chat. We'll talk to you soon.